And good evening, everyone. Glad you could make it. I'm Jake Roberts, host of Ghosts of Bacon. Uh, Great to see a lot of familiar names here. Uh, Big shout outs to you all: Amy, Carolyn, Jan, Sister Penny, my good friend Tom Burns in the house. Uh, hey, Jenny. So, I'm expecting kind of a light live turnout this evening. I didn't do a whole lot to push the show this week in the last couple of weeks. Been Things have been a little crazy here at Ghosts of Bacon headquarters here, trying to put some finishing touches on my next book, as I keep repeating to all of you. And I appreciate your continued interest and support in that. And tonight, what I decided to do is put together a little show for you this evening, because I always get the same question. What about John Dee? And well, I think I've done a good job of avoiding the question. I dodge it every chance I get, um, simply because it's mired in controversy. But this evening, I'm going to go ahead and wade into the fray. And what I'm going to do is present uh, a small fraction of the evidence that I have about John Dee and his true identity. Now, one of the things that people know from this show, and probably from a study of history, is that Sir Francis Bacon was one of Queen Elizabeth's top spies. And as such, he had multiple aliases, as did Sir Walter Raleigh, which I will be revealing in my next book as well. I'm going to be bringing forth a lot of information about Sir Walter Raleigh in my next book. So, putting all that together, and we consider that John Dee has also been called one of Queen Elizabeth's top spies. He was kicked out of Europe at one point for allegedly spying. So when we start putting all of this together, we have this whole group of people who are associated with one another in one way, shape, or form, and working for the same queen. And so this evening, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of present, like I said, a small fraction of the information I have regarding John Dee that appears in my next book. So hope you guys are going to enjoy this. So here we go. One of the things that inspired this show was a friend of mine emailed me and sent me a link to this video. 5 400-year-old encryptions by John Dee reveal the author of Shakespeare's works. And well, you guys all know me. That definitely caught my interest. And so what I'm going to do here, let me clean up. I don't like this, the way this is presenting here. Let's move me down here. Make that bigger. Sorry, everyone. I'm just a bit of a fanatic when it comes to like how the stuff looks. Okay, that's better. I like that. So when we start, hey, my friend, yes, John Edwards, John Dee, here we go. So when this came across my desk in my inbox, of course, you know me, I had to check this out. And lo and behold, within a couple of minutes in, I spot a copy of the cover of my book in the video. You can see it right here. So I'm like, well, that's cool. And the author of the book, or I'm sorry, the author of the video, her name is Lyle Colombo, PhD. Now, she is a doctor of philosophy. She taught philosophy at Loyola University before moving to Tulane University. Her husband is a professor in residence at Tulane, and she moved there with him, and ended up taking on the laudable position of raising her daughter as he did that job. And so, of course, she is an advocate of Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford, as the author of Shakespeare's works. So, needless to say, when I saw my book appearing here in the video, I really enjoyed it. And so, on this particular section, she mentioned how two of the authors' books appearing on the screen were had produced some real decryptions, whereas and talked about some of their decryption methods. So anyone who's interested in decryption methods used by the Freemasons and other historical groups, you should watch this video. It has a lot of really good information in it when it comes to decrypting ciphers. I highly recommend it. However, the conclusions, I think, are a little self-serving, but other than that, I think that it's worth the watch. Of course, then she said that the others on the screen, not by name, but obviously including my book, The Holy Trinity Decryption, that we, quote, rearranged letters until they found a message that pleased them. And so I wanted to reach out to Dr. Colombo, but I haven't received an answer. And the comment section wouldn't allow me to post a reply on her video, unfortunately, because I wanted to congratulate her on a really nice piece of work here. But I do want to say, Dr. Colombo, I was hardly pleased when I saw these messages appear that I decrypted. And I've said this repeatedly on the show. I, of course, was always a fan of the theory that Sir Francis Bacon was the son of Queen Elizabeth I, and he was not. I discovered that he is the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and Francis II of France. So there it is. I had it wrong. I found the correct answer, and I've been moving forward ever since, and other people have picked up on the same information with it and met with a great deal of success in their own decryptions because of it. So, I definitely was not pleased by that. Although I do want to say, and it's like this is not me poo-pooing this video. On the contrary, I'm telling you, if you are interested in decryption methods, you should probably watch it. Some really great stuff here. But I also find it very flattering that one of the a heavy hitter here in the DeVere camp has included, my book and has taken aim at it. I think that that's actually a good thing. So the video, when it comes to connecting the dots to DeVere, there are a lot of bare assertions, and that's as far as I'm going to take any criticisms. But I would like to say that because of the use of transposition ciphers in the plaque of Shakespeare's funerary monument, I understand why someone standing on the outside, not understanding how they work, would think that I just rearranged the letters. In fact, the transposition ciphers follow very specific rules, which I outline in my first book. So I wanted to throw that out there. Another interesting screenshot from the video, and I think that if John, you're out there, Jason, William, everyone would probably see this right away. Not really sure how this anagram appeared, but it was by Andrew Waugh in his book. But somehow from this section, it translates to by, that the sonnets were written by G.V.V., the poet. Anyone watching the show, you know that G is the name Bacon. We also know that VV, Roman numerals, is 55 or 55. Not 55 in Roman numerals, but V is 5 in Roman numerals. So we have a 55, which is the value of Francis Bacon in short cipher, the poet. I won't get into the values of this this little motto here. Too much to go into. So let's move on to John Dee. How did John Dee? So basically, people ask me, is he an alias? And so if he is, what does this say about the assertions that John Dee's name had appeared multiple times in this decryption that Dr. Colombo found? Well, what we can do is we can check the Rosy Cross alias formula. And then I always look for corroborating evidence from the writings of the individual or the artwork of the individual, which I have both. And if John Dee is an alias for someone, who's an alias for? And so if that's the case, this is the person who encrypted Dee's name in the Colombo decryptions. So this is a pretty fascinating story. It's a riddle wrapped within a riddle here. So according to the ciphertext that I will be revealing in my next book, I'm debuting this information for the first time this evening here on the show. And by the way, whenever you guys all know this, when I do these videos, Um, I'm only giving you the tip of the iceberg of what I found and what I have. Uh, it's all supported by textual evidence in my books. Um, and it goes, I go into far more detail in writing than I do in this show. So, according to the ciphertext that I've decrypted, um, John Dee was an alias. And so, if anyone remembers, I did a show on the Rosie Cross alias formula. Before I get into that, I'm going to check the comments, see how we're doing on the stream. Um, yep, you saw it right there. Jan with a question. So when Queen Elizabeth sent Sir Walter Raleigh to Roanoke, was he there to spy for her? And why did she choose him instead of one of her other spies? Well, it's a really interesting question, Jan. Good job. She didn't send him there to spy. He was a part of the colonization scheme that he and Sir Francis Bacon and, according to history, John Dee were proposing to Queen Elizabeth. Okay, so it wasn't so much as a spying expedition. However, when he came to the Americas, he certainly did do that with all of his encounters on the Spanish. Sir Francis Drake did the same thing, and he was also involved in Roanoke. So, great question. Hey, Patty, good to see you. And so, getting back to the show here. Yeah, John, I took that as a compliment for sure. So, what I do is there has to be a context for even checking to see if the person could be an alias in the first place. We then take the name and we calculate its sum using what's called the fourfold cipher, and I'll go into that here in a moment. Next, the next step, after you have that number, you have to identify a body of the solar system associated with the name. Now, usually it's a reference to Greek or Roman mythology, which, of course, our planets are named after the Greek and Roman gods. So what we do is we try to identify, okay, which body of the solar system is most closely associated with this individual. And then once we have that, we correlate this to the constants of Agrippa's magic squares. Now, if you're not familiar with Agrippa's magic squares, here you see the 3x3 magic square, okay? And its constant is 15 because adding any column or any row or any of the diagonals, either of the diagonals, the sums of the letters total 15. That's why it's a magic square. No matter what direction you go in, 15 is a constant. So there are many of these. There are a handful of these. The 4x4 is associated with Jupiter. If you saw, the 3x3 is associated with the planet Saturn. 4x4 is Jupiter with a constant of 34, whichever direction you add these up. Mars is 65, associated with the 5x5. Sun, of course, associated with Apollo, has a constant of 111, which we all know is the K cipher signature of the name Bacon. Funny how that works. The 6x6 magic square. 7x7 is associated with Venus with a constant of 175. And Mercury is associated with the 7x7 with its constant of 260. Lastly, the moon, Luna, with its constant of 369, value that we've mentioned on the show before. John, you're familiar with it. And so these are the constants that we work with here in the alias formula. I go into a great amount of detail in my next book explaining how I came about with or discovered the alias formula. So when we look at it in function, here we have a portrait of John Dee, which we'll look at more closely here in a moment. On this portrait, his name is listed as Johannes Dee. And so when we calculate that name in fourfold, we end up with a total of 144, which is the value in simple cipher of Rex Francis Bacon, perhaps coincidentally. Now, if you're not familiar with fourfold cipher, you have to take the letters that repeat, and each of them have a completely different value. So the N's are calculated together, and the E's are the ones that repeat here. And so the N's would be, let's see, 37 combined, and the E's would be 53, have a value of 53. And then the rest of the letters are calculated using the same values as simple cipher. You add all of that up, it totals 144. Now, John Dee was one of the very first adopters of the heliocentric model of the solar system. In other words, all of the planets revolve around the sun. And everything doesn't revolve around the Earth the way people in the Middle Ages believed. So heliocentric means the sun, that's the 6x6 magic square with its constant of 111. We subtract 111 from 144, we get 33, which everyone watching the show probably already recognizes is the value of the name Bacon in simple cipher. Now, when we calculate John Dee in fourfold, in the anglicized version of the name, it totals 77, which is a value of Rex Bacon again in simple cipher. I won't use the formula for this one because it also shows that Bacon may have shared this alias with someone else. Moving on, other corroborating evidence, that's the alias formula. It points to the name Bacon. Now what I do is I often look at the text on portraits. The inscriptions on portraits, first of all, they often have dates and names and ages, but they're not dates and ages. Oftentimes, they're cipher signatures. And in this case, we see the 67 right here, and that's the value. That's supposed to be John Dee's age in this portrait. However, it's also the simple cipher signature for the name Francis. This AETS you see here, when we look at it closely, this is not a T. When we zoom in, it's actually the letter I. So it changes the value. And when we add this up in simple cipher, again, we get 33. And when we add it up which is Bacon, when we add it using reverse cipher, we have a total of 67, which again is Francis in simple cipher. And in K cipher, it produces 111, which we know is Bacon in K cipher. Now, this is not definitive. This does not mean that D is Bacon. It could simply mean that Bacon was the one who painted the portrait, as he was an accomplished artist. If we look at the Sue in simple cipher, we have a total of 44, which is the value of Rex or King. 56 in reverse cipher is the reverse cipher value of the name Stuart, S-T-U-A-R-T, his true identity. And 96 is a value that I'm not going to share yet. It appears in my next book. If I were to share it now, it would reveal too much about probably the most significant discovery I've made since I first published my first book. So this is a famous doodle attributed to John Dee. It's called his ship doodle. And this was found in the margins of one of his books in his library. And lots of words to decrypt and so on. And I've done all that. Well, I'm going to just hit the highlights here. Things that are easy to see and easy to calculate. First of all, this was down in the corner margin of this book. And this is one of the earlier pages in the book, which has letters instead of numbers. This is a page number here, right at the very center of this image. And if we add the letters of O-O-I-I-I, simple cipher produces 55, which is Francis Bacon in short cipher. Reverse cipher produces 70, which is the value of the word Dauphin in simple cipher. And K cipher produces 133, the value of Stuart King in simple cipher. It's also multiple signatures of other variations of Francis Bacon's name. Here, if you look at the ship, these rivets, or probably dowels, when you count them all up, I encourage you all to find an image of this on the internet and do this very laboriously. And count all of these dots. On the left-hand side of the ship, on this part of the hull, there are 33 on the left, which we know the meaning of that. On the right, on this side of the hull, there are 11, which added together is, once again, 44, the value of Rex. So we also have 33s repeated here in the stern. See, the threes on their sides, on their faces. 33 is repeated twice. 3, 3, 3, 3. It's repeated in the waves. You can see the 33s in the waves. We have the triple taus on the masts here. 1, 2, 3, triple tau. And we also have it in the crosses. There's one cross here in the flag, a cross at the top of this mast, and a cross at the top of this mast. So we have multiple signatures of Bacon. Now, I say that this is not conclusive. This could simply mean that, hey, Francis Bacon borrowed one of John Dee's books and decided to doodle in the pages and mark it up and say, here I am. That's a possibility. John, I think this is the part you're going to like the most. So John Dee was known for creating what's called the Monas Hieroglyphica. And this is his emblem that he created to represent himself. And he stated in his writings that meditating on it, he could gain insights into hidden knowledge of the universe, transcending language barriers, and tapping into profound truths. And so what I'm going to demonstrate to you is that it does exactly that. It transcends language barriers because it uses, once again, the Pythagorean philosophy of reducing the world to numbers so it can be better understood. That's what these ciphers do. So it's a combination of multiple astronomical symbols. A lot of people will see the sun here with the dot, with the circle and the dot. We then have the moon. If we have the circle and this T, that becomes Venus. And then if we have the circle T and then add the moon, well, then that becomes Mercury and so on. So the symbols of all of these planets is what I'm saying. But as I said, the Pythagorean philosophy of the Rosy Cross is that everything can be explained by numbers. And so as I was meditating on this, what I did was I just turned it on its side. And the numbers appeared. Here we see a 31. We also have the letter T, letter O, and the letter C. And as you can see here, 31 plus T in simple cipher plus O in simple cipher plus C in simple cipher is 67, Francis in simple cipher. And so I think that's the profound truth contained within this Monas Hieroglyphica. There's a lot more. If we look at this frontispiece, I can go in my book, I go into a great deal of detail decrypting this book with those very familiar columns on either side, this frontispiece. There are multiple signatures contained within the text, within the imagery. There are pictorial ciphers here that keep repeating the same messages over and over again that are repeated from the beginning of my next book all the way to the end of it. And so the text itself, even in the book, also in the text on the cover, signatures. So, you know, if the name John Dee appears repeatedly in this cipher decryption that Dr. Colombo discovered, and she continually assures that it keeps saying the name Edward de Vere, though without a real connecting the dots trail of evidence. Who was he really? Well, we do know that he was a ward of Sir William Cecil. And if we take the simple cipher values of E and D, they equal 9. We take off the word ward out of Edward. Then it's I, ward, right? Because the letter I has the value of 9 in simple cipher. If we use reverse cipher, E plus D equals 41, which is a value that I'm going to, we'll keep that to myself for now until next time. The K cipher produces 61, which is the value of king in reverse cipher. So let me put it this way. Edward de Vere was not Bacon, but he may have had a hand in writing Shakespeare. So maybe I've been wrong. Maybe Edward de Vere did help write Shakespeare, but all of that's in my next book. And the title of it is now Keys of the Rosy Cross and the Ghosts of Bacon. And so one of the so yeah, Jan, that's a symbol of the sun, but it's also an alchemical symbol of gold, and those work hand in hand. And yeah, Jenny, sure does, doesn't it? So thanks, Adam. I appreciate that very much. Uh, Soltron, what a great question, my friend. I'm 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 not going to get into Shepherds of Acadia or uh, Countess of Pembroke uh, and Philip Sidney in my next book, unfortunately. Uh, that's something that other researchers have done a lot of work with, um, and I have my own thoughts on it. In particular, there's one character in history, Sir William Alexander, who added a whole section to Sir Philip Sidney's book, and that person there is an alias of Sir William Alexander. Let's see. Jan, this is why I love it every time you show up. Glad to hear it, Penny, because this is the first time I've ever shown it. um, but again, this is something that I've been avoiding for a while. And like I said, I went through it very quickly. But one of the things, oh, here we go. Okay, I'm scrolling back. Jeff, saw that you're here. Sorry. Um, are there any accounts of John Dee's early life, or did he just show up, leading to the account of his name being an alias? Well, it's funny you ask that, Jan. All of the aliases follow a pattern. When you look up their biographies and you start reading about them, usually it starts with something such as not much is known about so and so's early life. And then suddenly, boom, they burst on the world stage, full blown, larger than life, and become famous historical figures. And um, you know, there are accounts of John Dee's early life, and interestingly enough, they were written by John Dee. So the same thing occurs with Samuel de Champlain, which we now know was an alias, the best alias according to Francis Bacon, his best alias. So how do we know about him? From his own writings. And so we have a record of John Dee's birth date, for example, from an astrological chart that John Dee made about himself, and he's starting with his birth date. So if John Dee was an alias, and I do believe he is now, then it's very easy for him to fabricate that history. So again, great question. Tom Burns with a great question. Could it be a person being erroneously classified as a spy was in fact just someone embedded into a society to report on its progress? Absolutely. Well, again, the people with whom he would be embedded would be viewing him as a spy because he's there to report on their progress regarding whatever direction they're going. So, absolutely. I think that happened frequently, Tom. AO. Yeah, that's just it, AO. There's so much information here that this is, gang, this is the reason why my book has taken so long. I each time I go through and I edit, I find more information. Each time I revise, I recognize, oh, I need to give some more background information. This book, I'm taking my time with it because I really want people to be able to read it, understand it, and have a context for the uh, cipher evidence I'm putting in the book itself, and so that when people see it, they say, "Oh, I understand how it all fits together." That I think that was one of the biggest weaknesses of my first book, and after this is done, I'll go back and do a second edition. But oh, Amy, I don't know. See, here's the problem with that. Uh, Many of you here are fans of the show The Curse of Oak Island, and talking with one of the researchers for the show, uh, well, Aaron King Helton. Um, and I know she won't mind me mentioning this anecdote because it was really funny at the time, because she was right. One of the things I said, well, I think that, well, I know now that Sammy Day Champlain um, was Bacon. I said, and I also suspect this other person as being a mask. And correctly, she said, well, come on, Jake, everybody couldn't have been Bacon. And which I said, yes, that's true, Aaron. I agree with you 100%. Which is why I really take the time to connect all the dots. I discovered the alias formula, and that is held true for all of the names that Bacon claimed that he used. So it works consistently with each of those names, which means that if you didn't mention the name and it works, it's a piece of evidence indicating that that person could be an alias of one of these characters, of either Francis Bacon, Sir Francis Drake, Sir Walter Raleigh. And so, yeah, that's how I did it. So with that particular question, Amy, I don't know. I don't want to jump the gun there. Yeah, John, Saturn was a god in ancient Roman religion, especially celebrated Saturnalia each December. Yeah. And Saturnalia symbolized the freeing of the souls into immortality. Did not know that. That's really interesting. Let's see, it says I have some new comments here. Okay, so I'm going to start at the end and go backwards. Do you think Queen Elizabeth I would have known that someone as important as Dee, her eyes, was just an alias for another one of her spies, Bacon, or was she left in the dark? Intended? No, she absolutely knew. I think it was kind of a joke when he would attend court dressed as Dee. I think she got a kick out of it, honestly, from everything I've seen. So she most definitely would have. She most definitely would have known that. Also, if you calculate the value of the word I, it's 33. There is a D Bacon reference in The Tempest via Prospero. Yes. Those of you not familiar with the Shakespearean play The Tempest, it involves a brother who was a duke, I believe it was Mantua, and was shipwrecked at sea. And he decided that it was fine. His brother took over as duke, his younger brother, and ruled the city while he was on an island studying magic. And um, that does correlate to Sir Francis Bacon, particularly with his younger brother, half brother James, ascending the throne of Scotland and then England. Um, that's definitely there. So, as far as, since it was John Dee, being um, this magician and the court astrologer and court magician for Queen Elizabeth, um, there is that corollary there as well. Oh gosh, Jenny, that's exactly what happened. You're commenting on how I've been revising my book. That's exactly what happens. Every time you look at it and you start revising and looking at it a little bit more in depth and then finding correlating evidence, corroborating evidence, excuse me, it's a whole nother rabbit hole and it just keeps networking out. And so it just never ends. So basically what I've done is I put a cap on a limit. this the chapters I have now, I'm editing those and I'm formulating the final draft and putting that together here in the next month. So anything else I find is going to have to go and, well, go figure. Another book. Hey, Michelle, it's great to have you back. We missed you. Good to see you. AO with an interesting look at it. Fraudsters can use multiple aliases. I'm not calling Francis a fraudster, but he could have been and would have had the time to create multiple names throughout his lifetime, in my opinion. He did exactly that. And the funny thing is, I don't think he basically committed fraud against himself oftentimes. Some of his, the way he would not use his own name in some of his publications when he's putting out some really brilliant work. In a letter to King James, he even said to King James, that I often don't bother using my true name or true identity when I'm putting information out there. So he definitely did that. You hit the nail on the head, John. Remember, there's propaganda as well in spycraft. How do you know when a decoded message is legitimate and when it's propaganda? Well, they use the power of propaganda in the plays, frankly. I have evidence that Sir Walter Raleigh wrote Don Quixote to, demoralize the Spanish. He hated them. And so he was Cervantes. And so, in that sense, I think they were putting out propaganda. I don't think propaganda would be in a coded message, unless, of course, they were, doing it against one another. But I don't see that happening. One of the things that they did do, which I think is really kind of funny, this isn't my next book. Each of these spies, when they had a new alias, on the surface level, if you use simple reverse and case ciphers, they kind of give the appearance that they are one of the other guys because one of their signatures will pop up just using those. But when you dig deeper and use the alias formula, that's when you get the real answer. Great question. Like I said, I went through that information very quickly, everyone. But oh, Andrea, that's pretty interesting. The Tempest is about Stephen Hopkins. He was your ancestor. Very interesting. And Soltron, I follow another channel that believes Sir Philip Sidney may have not died when he was supposed to have. They believe he may have contributed to the Shakespeare works, especially the sonnets. I'm not going to rule that out. In fact, I'm of the inclination that Sir Philip Sidney may have become Sir William Alexander in Newfoundland, and then he added to his own book using a different name. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to just, oh, you know what? Here I am, Sir William Alexander. This other guy wrote this for his sister years ago. I'm just going to add to it. Doesn't seem to make sense to me. Yes, John, in the 1611 King James Version, there are plenty of encrypted messages. We've shown some of them on the show, and a lot of the messages that they wrote were anti-establishment in a sense, for sure. He was very humanist in the sense that he wanted to liberate people. Let's see, Ray. Which map has the 3 crosses on top left? Also, maybe someone better at deciphering letters numbers can look at this, but I find it interesting. Cremona and Ontiora sound similar. 7-7. That is interesting, isn't it? Maybe we'll have to dig into that, Ray. I'm not sure I understand what you mean by which map has the 3 crosses on top left. I referenced the 3 crosses in Dee's ship doodle, but Sydney was the reason, or one of the main reasons, Sonnets became popular. Absolutely. Jenny saying if they thought one of their codes was compromised, they might still send messages with it with wrong info, or even set up a code for them to break to provide misleading info. That's absolutely true, Jenny. I don't get the sense that in these particular ciphers that we're playing with here of Sir Francis Bacon were necessarily used for statecraft all the time. I think that they had other tools that they used for that. I think this was more of the Rosy Cross personal use. But again, that's just my opinion. PK's asking an interesting, do you think these encodings might be hiding esoteric knowledge like 57, the Sefer and Bina and Kabbalah? Yep, in Hebrew gematria. 57 is also associated with the 70th Shem HaMaratha, the word which produces all things. These ideas are definitely related, PK. I can't get into too much detail about it at this time in the show, but I definitely will in the future, because there are associations going back and forth between all of these things, 100%. Oh, that's right. Yes, that was the map that Ray was. Yes, that was the one that I decrypted that leads us to the money pit in Oak Island. Yep. Sorry, it's been a long week. And it's supposed to be Golgotha, the crucifixion area of Christ. Jake, do you see any value in the number 31 when you turn the Monos hieroglyphica symbol on its side? That was awesome. Thanks. Yes, 31, Adam, is the reverse cipher value of the word Rex. So there you go. It's what kind of drew my attention to it in the first place. Yeah, Ray, that is the map of Jerusalem in the 1611 version of the Bible. It's on page 74. So. Jenny, I think that they knew of them 100%. I really think they knew of them 100%. Yes. And Amy comments that the Rosicrucians were teaching alchemy. So, well, they were, and but we have to remember again. I don't tend to interpret these ideas literally. I view the idea of alchemy as being very much one and the same as the teachings of Freemasonry and the idea of self-actualization. That the Philosopher's Stone, okay, the noggin, is what needs to be developed and turned into gold. In other words, enlightened during the Enlightenment process. So, yes, and the Founding Fathers were Freemasons, yes, most of them. Well, again, AO, it would be interesting to find out if Francis Bacon's bloodline survived and still around today, as one day that family is going to change history as we know it, and there will be a shift in global power. Um, I think that's the reason why anyone who delves into Francis Bacon's secret identity and him being of a royal bloodline, two royal bloodlines actually, that they end up really getting criticized and come under fire for sure, because it, especially back then, it would have really shifted the entire global power structures as they knew it back then. And if there are any heirs alive today, well, I guess that could be kind of embarrassing for the current royal family. Yeah, Barbara, pretty much what Barbara's convinced the Templars were learning alchemy. Lead into gold is also a metaphor for enlightenment, 100%. And it's that lead gray matter of our philosopher's stone, um, the philosopher's stone being the brain, the mind, um, becoming golden with the enlightenment process. All right, gang, that was a good quick one tonight. I'm going to wrap things up, and looks like we're kind of peering out the comments. So, actually, had a pretty good live turnout here this evening, and like I said, I'm going to apologize again. Last show, I apologize for I haven't been as present in our Facebook group as I need to be. But like I said, things are very busy at Ghosts of Bacon headquarters, and so I'll be having a little bit more free time in my hands in a couple of months. I'll be retiring at the end of January from teaching and be working on my research full time. So that's very exciting here, but it's a lot of work and a lot of stuff building up to it and leading up to it. So that's what I've been working on. But I'm going to sign off and want to thank you all for popping in. Thank you very much, Adam. Appreciate John. Always great. And Andrea, yeah, that's what I'm here for. Fire away all the questions. Michelle, Ronnie, Morrison, great to see you back, my friend. Like I said, we've missed you. So on that note, like all of you to keep tabs on what's going on in the Ghosts of Bacon. If you haven't hit the like button on my YouTube channel, please do that for me. It'd be a big help. I'd appreciate it. Well, thank you, Borchers Texas Farm. Appreciate you. And so, to that end, until next time, just be nice to people. See you next time, gang. Thanks a lot.